Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. So this is Glute Series episode 3 and it is honestly like the most common question that I get asked. I think it's a really important one to cover in general and go through in massive amount of detail because the barbell hip thrust is the best exercise for glutes, and there's also a lot of stuff on the internet where it shows incorrect form. So there's like so many mixed messages of like how to actually do a barbell hip thrust. So first things first, I'm going to go through with you how not to hip thrust, okay? Let me just, also got my barbell pad, would highly recommend a barbell pad. I'm going to go through bench height, foot position, head position, everything with you, but first things first, let's do incorrect form. So the most common thing that we tend to see is when people are hip thrusting, they think it's wise to keep the head back and do this. And I literally see this so often in the gym. The issue is when you put your head back, you might find it a bit easier to get the weight up because you're using all your force and going back. But as soon as you put your head back like that, automatically you hyperextend your spine. That basically means you are going to have a very, very sore and painful back. Like when I first started training, when I first started lifting, I would literally do this to get the weight up because I couldn't get it up any other way because I didn't know proper hip thrust technique. So this is the most common mistake, putting the head back with the bar and hyperextending your spine. So let's move into proper hip thrust form. Now, the first thing we're going to go through is the bench height. This is the most difficult thing depending on which gym you go in. The optimum height for a bench is 14 to 16 inches. Now, as you can see, I am on the lifting platform, which raises me up probably like 5 more inches. So I would say for me at this height here, that is pretty perfect. It's 14 to 16 inches. If you don't have access to a lifting platform or being on a lifting platform, you can use the decline benches which do this. You can use a box. I usually use a 12-inch and a 3-inch box on top of each other, and you will find that is so helpful to be at the right height for hip thrust, because if the bench is too high, to be honest, you'll have shit technique because it's too high and you're very, very uncomfortable and you can't even get the bar onto you, let alone get the weight up.
Moving on to your foot position. Now, foot position is so important because it depends how you will feel the hip thrust in different muscles. So if your feet are too far away from your body, you'll feel it in your hamstrings, which is super common. If your feet are too close to your body, you're going to feel it in your quads. So if I just show you with the barbell. Also, I always get asked how you actually get the barbell on. Roll the barbell on. Like, I wouldn't suggest using the preset small bars. I would suggest using massive 5 plates because you're not going to get proper hip thrust technique if your barbell's that, because you can't actually get it on properly without sliding down the bench and stuff. So roll it on. You can use 5 plates, whatever you want to use, the best way to do it. So once we've rolled the barbell up, your position on the bench, so if you can see from the side, you don't want to be too far down the bench that you're literally resting like on your neck, because you're not going to get any force into the bench, might slide that way. You don't want to be so far up like you're resting in the middle of the back. You want to be just on your upper back, so near your stance, but definitely not resting on your back, so you're pretty comfortable. Now, moving on to the actual hip thrust and the foot position. So it takes me a while to actually get in my position. I'm always faffing, I play with my feet and things like that. So when you're at full hip extension, which is at the top of the movement, your shins should be vertical. So when I push up, let me just show you. There's a 90-degree angle that you can see here. So like I said to you before, you want your shins to be vertical at full hip extension. So if I was to push my feet further away, let's just not slide off. That's how you'll feel it more in your hamstrings. I could do 1 rep and that's simply hamstring activation. If I shuffle them in so far, like that, you're just going to get quad activation because the transmission of force goes all through quads. So all I want you to focus on is at full hip extension, think about that 90-degree angle. One thing I've also experimented with over the past year or so is my actual foot position. So what I found is when I turn my feet outwards a little bit, so externally rotating the feet, you get high levels of glute activation because all the fibers of your glutes run in the same way. So if I was to do this, get in a normal position, knowing I'll be at 90 degrees, externally rotate, that for me is me the highest level of glute activation, specifically your upper glute mat. Right, moving on to your head position and your neck position. So like I showed you at the start, when people do this, everything down here just goes wrong. You hyperextend your spine, put an anterior pelvic tilt, it kills your back. It's just no. So let's go through some key little pointers. So when you're doing a hip thrust, what I want you to do is find a spot on the, I've got a mirror in front of me, so I'm literally looking at myself, but find a spot on the wall in front of you, whatever's in front of you, and do not take your gaze off that spot. So you're literally looking directly forward at that spot. So what you'll notice is when you go into a hip thrust and you're staring at that spot, you're going to get like a double chin. Your chin is naturally going to tuck like that. So my head doesn't move. So what happens if I'm keeping that gaze like that throughout the whole movement, and I hip thrust up like this, you can see that I'm not hyperextending my spine, my chest and my torso are flat, whereas if I put my head back, the chest pops up and you get an instant arch in your lower back. But if we push it back down, I'm completely flat, I can feel it in my glutes. And when you're doing a hip thrust, when you're at that top position, you completely want to avoid hyperextending your spine, so that's the arch, anterior pelvic tilt, and you want more of a neutral / posterior pelvic tilt. And it's been shown that when you do have a neutral position, this is when you will have the highest level of glute upper max activation. So just do like a few reps where you stare at the spot, chin tucked. The final tip I have for you today with your hip thrust, I don't want to overload you with things to do because then it'll just go in one ear and out the other, is just pushing through your heels. So when you're doing a hip thrust, and I do this in literally every single hip thrust variation, like B-stance, stagger stance, banded, glute bridges, push through your heels, okay? So what happens if you push through it, sometimes even lift my toes off, they're not even involved anymore. When you push through your heels, all the transmission of force goes to your hamstrings, your glutes. But if you push with the front of your foot, it'll go to your quads. So if I just give you a little demo, get in the position, walk past. So all I'm doing is thinking about pushing through my heels, and my front toes actually do lift off. And this is what I've always done, and you're going to get the most activation through your glutes if you actually do a hip thrust this way, rather than being on your toes or flat footed. Always push back a little bit into heels, and that is how you do a barbell hip thrust. Now that was Glutes Ep.3. Very, very important. Go back and watch episodes 1 and episodes 2 if you haven't already. Really hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you do, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!